Welcome to the Didrichsen Art Museum podcast. Helsinki is a city with an unexpected geography. Parts of it extend out onto islands and peninsulas where the sea meets the city along an intricate shoreline. On one of these islands, you'll find the Didrichsen Art Museum, founded in 1965 by Marie-Louise and Gunnar Didrichsen. It lies on the western shore of Kuusisaari, an island in Helsinki that's reachable by 2 bridges. The museum sits in contrast to the traditional vertical shapes that people think of in Finland, the distinctly peaked roofs and tall pine forests. Compared to these shapes, the Didrichsen Art Museum is a study in horizontalness. Set low at the top of a gently sloping seafront lot, the building's mid-century aesthetics and brutalist architectural elements place it squarely in a design-led era. Its exterior centerpiece is a large minimalist pool of water in the museum's courtyard. But this isn't only a unique museum-reflecting pool, it's also a swimming pool. For this museum was once the private home of its founders, Marie-Louise and Gunnar Didrichsen. This podcast will take you through the story of the founding of the museum, the building of its impressive collection, and how a series of unanticipated events led to its creation. We'll learn about the museum's founders and their passion for Finnish and international art and architecture, and their friendships with some remarkable artists during an insider's tour of the museum itself. It's no coincidence that you'll run into people named Didrichsen here from time to time. The family has maintained its purposeful connection to artists and the art world through 3 generations. Our guide on this journey is uniquely qualified to tell us about the museum. We're joined by Jenny Didrichsen, the granddaughter of museum founders Marie-Louise and Gunnar Didrichsen.
Hi, I'm excited to be taking you through the building and sharing stories about it with you. You can listen to this podcast as a narration as you walk through the museum grounds and interiors, or as an audio experience to discover on your own time, wherever you choose to be. I hope that you enjoy it.
The Didrichsen Art Museum was designed by acclaimed Finnish architect Viljo Rindell. The architecture and design of the site have a timeless appeal, and as an indoor-outdoor experience, the museum has rightfully been referred to as the Cultural Oasis of Helsinki. So who were Marie-Louise and Gunnar Didrichsen, and how and why did they create this?
My grandfather Gunnar Didrichsen moved to Finland from Denmark in 1927 at the age of 24. A few months after that, in 1928, he founded his own company, Transmeri, a distributor and manufacturer of mostly international consumer brands, which still exists today. He met my grandmother, Marie-Louise Granfeldt, who was a Swedish-speaking Finn, in Helsinki at an operetta on Independence Day on the 6th of December 1938. They fell in love and married just 5 months later. Both enjoyed music and soon discovered that they also shared a passion for art. The first piece they bought together was The Meal by Finnish painter Pekka Halonen in 1942. It was a fateful purchase for the painting. The house where it had come from was destroyed during a Soviet bombing of Helsinki, just a few weeks later.
The Halonen paintings sparked their interest in collecting art, and the success of Gunnar's business funded their acquisitions. They found new talents early and believed in them, and supported many up-and-coming Finnish artists. The museum's Finnish collection also includes works by Helene Scherfbeck, Akseli Gallen-Kallela, Hugo Simberi, and Eila Hiltunen, to name a few. Over the years, the museum's collection has continued to grow. Today it's comprised of some 1,000 works, including paintings and sculptures from Finnish traditional art to international modernism, as well as ancient artifacts from pre-Columbian and Asian cultures. There are works by many internationally renowned artists, such as Pablo Picasso, Salvador Dali, Alberto Giacometti, and Vasily Kandinsky, among many others. The museum's collection boasts the only Mark Rothko painting in Finland and the largest collection of Henry Moore sculptures in continental Europe. In the early 60s, Marie-Louise and Gunnar bought their first pre-Columbian pieces. Gunnar described this in his notes about the collection.
We knew practically nothing about pre-Columbian art until seeing an exhibition at Bukowski in Stockholm in 1962. We became quite fascinated by this new world that opened itself to us, a world which we could not have imagined in our dreams, that comprised more than 10 different civilizations and covered 3,000 years. The following year, we made our first acquisition, a small sitting Nayarit figurine from Mexico, which is still one of our most beloved objects.
The rest of the ancient collection includes mainly artifacts from China and Persia. The oldest piece in the collection is a Persian bowl, which is more than 6,000 years old.
What's nice about the collection is that it was a truly joint effort, since the only criteria my grandparents had for an acquisition was that both of them had to like the artwork. This is one of the reasons why the collection is so diverse, and I think it's a beautiful detail about their relationship with art as a couple.
In Gunnar Didrichsen's own words,
Our collection is not a museum in the traditional sense of the word. We have not collected according to a fixed plan, nor do we claim to have a representative collection of any artist or any school of art. It is an entirely personal collection of what we thought beautiful and interesting.
But let's get to the place itself. The first thing you see when you get to the museum is a red brick building with a strongly horizontal appearance. It's surrounded by tall pine trees, as well as a park filled with sculptures. It is the only public sculpture park in Helsinki. While walking up the hill to the museum, you can't miss the pale green-colored bronze sculpture of a giant face by South African artist Lionel Smith. It's called Assemble, and it stands just above the parking area in front of the museum. The sculpture's size, combined with its intense look and beautiful features, has been magnetic to visitors. It's become one of the most photographed sculptures in the park. You'll also pass several other sculptures as you continue. And just as you get to the top, you'll find Atom Piece, an iconic bronze work from the mid-1960s by British sculptor Henry Moore. Turn to your right, and you'll discover what many agree is an impressive entrance to a museum. It's set in a wide courtyard, hemmed in by the U-shaped red brick museum building, with elements of concrete brutalism and large windows revealing the museum's art and interiors. The courtyard leading to the entrance is constructed on 2 levels. In the lower level, and surrounded by sculptures, you'll find a large rectangular pool filled with bright turquoise water. It is not a common sight to have an outdoor pool in Finland, and certainly wasn't at the time of its construction. And it definitely catches the attention of visitors. The upper level consists of a pathway to the museum's large wooden main door. Along this path rests the stunning Henry Moore bronze sculpture, reclining figure on a pedestal.
Viljo Revel intended as an architect for the swimming pool in the courtyard to function as a mirror. During the day, nature reflects onto the pool, and at night, paintings and sculptures are reflected, which really makes this a living artwork in my mind, constantly changing with the time of day, season, and current exhibition. No matter the season, the courtyard always looks peaceful and inviting. The turquoise from the pool and the red from the bricks in the building, gray from concrete elements, combined with the green grass in the summer or white snow in the winter. It's all very soothing. As soon as I see this view, I feel calmness. For me, it's a place for the mind and soul to rest. I love reclining figure on a pedestal because it has such a personal connection to my grandparents. Viljo Revel introduced them to Henry Moore in the late 1950s, and they became great friends. Revel felt that this piece would complete his architectural concept, and so my grandparents bought it as their first Henry Moore sculpture in 1961, and it's been here in the inner courtyard ever since. After Henry Moore passed away in 1986, of all the museums in the world that wanted to organize a memorial exhibition of Henry Moore, his widow Irina chose the Didrichsen Art Museum because of their friendship.
As we continue, we enter the museum through its heavy modern teak door and come to the foyer. Straight ahead is the reception and the museum shop. They are located in what used to be the janitor's apartment, which was transformed into a more functional space during a renovation in 2014. To the right, you can see a glimpse of the museum wing, the parquet hall and the stairs leading to the underground exhibition spaces. But let's start by stepping to the left, into the family home, with Jenny.
Right now we are entering the living room of the villa, which was the home of my grandparents, my father, and my uncles and aunt. The family originally lived very centrally in Helsinki, on Merikatu, but wanted to move to a quieter place. At the time, moving to the island of Kuusisari was almost like moving to the countryside, as there were only a few other villas on the entire island. Today there are over 100 buildings on the island, and it's a popular location for embassies. The home we are now standing in was built in 1957, and it looks almost exactly the same way it looked when my family was living here, with much of its original mid-century Scandinavian furniture intact. I feel the living room still conveys the warmth and coziness it did when people lived here. Visitors often comment that it feels like coming to a home, but an unusual one, a unique one.
As mentioned, the villa and the museum were designed by architect Viljo Rindell. The original residence was built in 1957, and the museum wing was constructed between 1964 and 65. Rindell was a renowned Finnish architect, famed internationally for his design of the Toronto City Hall in Canada. In fact, his City Hall design was the winning entry in what at the time was the world's largest architectural competition, winning out over 500 participating architects. During the process, Rindell also convinced the city of Toronto to purchase a large, over 3-meter-tall Henry Moore sculpture, The Archer, which still sits beautifully in front of the building today. Initially, Marie-Louise and Gunnar had turned to Alvar Aalto, Finland's preeminent architect at the time, and wanted him to design their home in the same style that he had brought to Maire and Harry Gulliksen's Villa Mairea on the west coast of Finland. Aalto was very busy with public projects, and regretfully let them know that he wasn't able to take on the task. However, Aalto recommended his colleague Viljo Rindell for the job, assuring them that Rindell was the only one who could reach the same level as he would for the home's design.
I always say that it feels almost like it was meant to be that he became the architect, because without him and an unanticipated event, this museum would most likely not exist today.
One of the first things that people notice in the villa is the calming sound of the fountain. Surrounded by plants in a winter garden, it's located in the middle of the living room. Bordered by Italian marble tiles, it lies below a high light well with a skylight that bathes the area in a natural glow, reminiscent of an ancient Roman atrium. There is also a unique built-in library behind the garden. Opposite the library, you'll find a dining room. Don't miss the lamp above the dining table, a modern version of a crystal chandelier with dozens of simple glass rods extending from its center. It was beautifully designed by Austrian Friedhelm Bacalowitz and popularized by American architect John Lautner, who's well known for the modernist residential masterpieces he created in the Los Angeles and Palm Springs areas of California. The large round knob on the wall is a mechanical dimmer and may have been the first dimming device installed in a home in Finland. This room is especially significant because this is where the idea of the museum was born.
My grandmother loved hosting dinner parties here. My grandparents conducted much of their social lives around this dinner table. It could be enlarged to seat 12, which she felt was the largest number of guests for a dinner where you could experience everyone. The people who came were fascinating personalities, from artists and architects to politicians and even royalty. Some were regular guests, like sculptress Eila Hiltunen and President Urho Kekkonen, who would occasionally stop over when he had some spare time. He once said that he could not find anything as rewarding on such occasions than visiting the Didrichsens. My grandmother made sure that no guest would ever be served the same menu. She kept a diary where she wrote down the name of the guests, the date of the dinner, the menu, and even what she was wearing and which painting was hanging on the wall of the dining room that night. This room also held a secret. It originally had a small button on the floor at the end of the table where my grandmother sat, that she'd press with her foot to let the kitchen staff know when they were needed. It's one of many hidden features to the house, and the guests were always wondering how the staff knew exactly when to clear dishes or refill their wine glasses. It was like a magic trick.
At one of these dinners, both architect Rindell and artist Ragnhild Kaven, who was a good friend, were present. The year was 1962. It was a beautiful summer evening, and the conversation was active and friendly, and it landed on the topic of the growing art collection that Marie-Louise and Gunnar had acquired, and the fact that the walls of the villa were no longer large enough to display all of the artworks.
So at this dinner, Ragnhild Kaven asked them why they didn't just build a gallery wing to display the collection for their friends. Rindell was there, so they talked about it for a little while, but of course it wasn't taken seriously by anyone.
Once the guests had left, Gunnar told his son Peter that he felt lucky that he'd avoided a set of extra expenses. Peter asked what he meant by that, and Gunnar responded,
"An architect is also an artist, and he will not retouch a finished work."
Gunnar Didrichsen was in for a surprise.
Only a week later, the doorbell rang and my grandfather went to see who was there. And at the door was Viljo Rindell, with a big smile on his face and a cardboard tube under his arm with the first rough drawings for the museum wing.
Gunnar recounted the events in his journal.
For the next 2 years, Rindell worked enthusiastically to unite the three components, architecture, art, and nature, into a museum which was to be beautiful, but at the same time should make a visitor feel at home. We think he succeeded, and that a critic spoke no less than the truth when she called it one of his most beautiful works.
I think it's incredible. The right people in the right place at the right time led to the birth of this museum that means so much to us today.
Rindell unfortunately passed away before both the museum wing and Toronto City Hall were completed, and so he never saw these creations finished. The museum wing, which was attached to the villa, was completed in the spring of 1965. It was initially intended to be a private space to share the collection with close friends, guests, and family. However, during the process of building it, the idea of sharing it with a wider circle developed.
As the idea of the museum took shape, my grandparents realized that they wanted to share this art, these treasures they'd collected, with the public. So on the 1st of September 1965, they opened the museum to the public, and it was officially inaugurated on September 16th of that year by Sylvi Kekkonen, wife of President Urho Kekkonen, who also attended the event. It was a beautiful ceremony attended by over 200 of the many cultural, business, and political leaders of Finland present.
Former museum director Peter Didrichsen was 15 years old at the time and recalls the day that the museum first opened to visitors.
There was a constant queue during the 2 hours that the museum was open. I sold exactly 200 tickets, which cost 2 Finnish marks each, the equivalent of around €4 today. In the beginning, the museum was open twice a week for 2 hours at a time on Wednesdays and Sundays, and my mother sold tickets and guided the visitors through the exhibitions. She was described by the press as the most elegant museum guide in Helsinki.
And from there, the family began what some have seen as a fascinating double life, one private and one exposed willingly to the public.
The museum is the first home I remember having lived in. It is where I spent my toddler years before the villa was also turned into a museum in 1993. The building had functioned as a museum and a home simultaneously for 28 years until then. The only thing separating the two spaces was a curtain between the living room and the foyer. Sometimes guests would take a peek behind the curtain to see what was going on in the home or to greet my grandfather, who was often sitting by the window or in the library in an orange armchair reading. He read just about every book that you see today in the library.
Visitors often asked Peter Didrichsen, when he was museum director, what it was like to live in a home which was simultaneously a museum that complete strangers would visit on a regular basis. He often replied in a similar way to how his parents described it. In Marie-Louise's words,
"We have enjoyed what we have collected and enjoyed sharing it with others who have appreciated it. Then it was suggested that our museum should be open to the public. Many thought that this might be an inconvenience to us, as the gallery is so closely connected to our private home, but we have not found it to be so over the years when thousands have visited it. On the contrary, we have enjoyed meeting many of them. Their response has amply repaid us for the trouble we have taken."
In 1993, parts of the villa were open to the public, so the architectural details that Viljo Revel brought to the home itself can now be seen by the museum's visitors. There are many interesting architectural details inside the villa. We visited the dining room and the library with its winter garden. Next to it, there's an aquarium, an original design element that's been part of the living room since 1958, when the Didrichsens moved in. Opposite the fish tank across the hall is a children's playroom, a large space with natural light flooding in from skylights. A massive wooden soundproof sliding door, which is still there, separated this room and blocked any noise from playing children from the rest of the living room when guests visited. On the right side of the playroom, there are 4 wooden doors leading to the bedroom of each one of the 4 children. First, the oldest son, John, born 1945, then Hans, 1949, Peter, 1950, and the final room at the end on the right was for Anne-Marie, the youngest and the only daughter in the family, born in 1953. She had the privilege of getting her own pink-tiled bathroom. Her bedroom is open to the public, and visitors can even use her bathroom, which has one of the best restroom views in Helsinki, at least according to visitors. One of the most charming details is in the wall of the playroom.
One of my favorite stories is that Viljo Revel ingeniously built my Uncle Hans' electric train set into the playroom's wall. He'd happened to overhear my grandfather telling Hans that his most treasured possession had to be sold because it didn't fit into the new modern home. Revel insisted that Hans had to have his train and that he could hide it so nobody would even know it was there.
The compartment is built into the wall between the playroom and the dining area, from where it can be pulled out when the train set is in use. Now let's return to the living room and continue toward the large windows. Here we find another iconic Henry Moore sculpture in bronze, 3-piece reclining figure, which Moore completed in 1975.
The view through these windows is of the bay, and it's a beautiful sea view. Though if you look up, you'll notice what seems to be an extension of the interior ceiling, outside of the window. Part of Revel's design aesthetic here is that lines and shapes continue beyond the windows to create a seamless feeling of the interior and exterior blending into each other. If you look past the trees, down by the water, there is a dock. It was a decades-long dream of my father, Peter Didrichsen, to restore the old dock, and its renovation was completed in 2014. Visitors can now arrive to the museum by boat or on a cruise organized by the museum on special days. It's remarkable to come here by water. Off to the left and uphill from the shore, you might see a sculpture made of stone. It is the monument for my grandparents' grave. Their wish was to be interred together in a place with a view of the sea and of the sunset. The monument was made by sculptor Arvo Siikamäki, and it's fittingly called the Empty Grave. On top of it is a small vault with a stone door half open. Before you leave the museum, you can visit the memorial and also pass by the rest of the sculptures in the sculpture park.
Opposite the large living room windows is a wooden cabinet. At the center of the cabinet, and in perfect mid-century style, there's a hidden bar. On special occasions or during guided tours, you can get a glimpse of what it looks like on the inside. When the two cabinet doors are opened, shelves with drinking glasses slide out. The shelves double as stylish serving trays. The spirits are stored on the racks of the doors. These minute details were also designed by Rindell and his team. Behind the cabinet is a staircase which used to lead to Marie-Louise and Gunnar's suite and the family sauna. Nowadays, the downstairs is used by the museum staff and for hosting company meetings in a specially designed space.
There's one more hidden detail in the living room. In the library, you can see that there is one section of the structure that's made of a different type of wood. While the rest of the wooden elements used throughout the villa are teak, these cupboards are made of walnut. Inside are a radio and a vintage Philips record player. This was a gift for my grandfather's 50th birthday from my grandmother in 1953. Rindell insisted that the gift would have to come along to the new house, despite his vision to only decorate the villa in a modern style, so he included it in the interior build.
One thing you'll notice is that there's a lot of natural light inside the museum. It isn't just from the unusually large windows spanning from floor to ceiling, which was unique for that time, but there's also light coming in from the skylights. It was very important for Rindell that there would be an abundance of natural light throughout the building. Marie-Louise Didrichsen passed away in 1988. A few years before her death, she tried several times to acquire what she considered one of the most beautiful sculptures by Eila Hiltunen. The steel sculpture looks like silver flower petals reaching up toward the sky. It's no wonder Hiltunen named it crescendo, after the musical term which signifies rising in a composition. However, this particular sculpture was extremely precious to its maker, and Eila Hiltunen didn't want to let it go. Peter Didrichsen recalls how things unfolded after Marie-Louise's death.
My mother loved that sculpture, and I brought up the idea to my father of acquiring it in her memory. He went to the sculptress, who found the idea heartbreaking and beautiful, and was now ready to let go of it. She wanted to honor Marie-Louise, and what better way to do it than through crescendo. Since 1989, this piece has been an integral part of the sculpture park, and the base is adorned by a plate that reads, Marie-Louise Didrichsen in memoriam.
Gunnar passed away in 1992, and the villa officially opened to the public in 1993, which meant an increase in the size of the museum's exhibition space. In the years since, 2 generations of descendants have stepped in to play significant roles in the museum's future. After more than 20 years of working at the museum alongside her husband Peter, Maria Didrichsen was appointed director of the Didrichsen Art Museum in 2020, only the 3rd director in the museum's 55-year history. Maria's history with the museum, however, goes back much further as a visitor who was inspired as a teenager by a monumental exhibit at the time. It was her first encounter with the museum.
The first memory I have of the museum is from 1975. I was 16 years old, and my mother took me to see an exhibition by Reidar Särestoniemi, who was a fascinating character. He was known as the shaman of Lapland. The museum and Särestoniemi's colorful art made a real impression on me that day. He's still one of my favorite Finnish painters. I remember that the queue outside the museum reached all the way down to the main street on Kuusisaari. It held the record as the museum's most popular exhibition for over 20 years. It was seen by more than 21,000 visitors during the course of only 1 month. At the time, I would never have guessed that I would end up marrying the son of the founders and create a career here, and eventually become museum director myself. It's been a thrilling journey for me, and I couldn't think of a more interesting and inspiring place to work.
During its first decades, the museum was open just twice a week. But in 1997, the opening hours were extended to 6 days a week, and the activities at the museum increased. The next generation valued the legacy that Marie-Louise and Gunnar had left behind and wanted to make sure it wouldn't fall into oblivion. They worked over the years to build the museum into a cultural institution and to make it a successful brand. In 2013 and 2014, they invested in a major renovation with special emphasis on security, functionality, and accessibility, which also helped the museum grow and serve new audiences. The museum is also known for its artful, high-quality exhibition books.
Nowadays, the museum has some 50,000 to 70,000 visitors annually. We put on 3 exhibitions each year, often linked to the museum collections. Throughout the years, there has been a wide range of exhibitions presenting paintings, sculptures, photography, ancient cultures, and even fashion and interior design. Edvard Munch, Vincent van Gogh, and Kazimir Malevich have been some of the most prestigious exhibitions in the museum.
It was my grandparents' greatest wish to share their art and their home with their friends and the public. We want to continue honoring that wish by keeping the museum open and relevant for generations to come. In my grandparents' own words, we hope that our small museum will remain the home of everything beautiful, art, architecture, nature, and music, and that it will give others as much joy as it has given us.
We hope you've enjoyed the program and that you've been inspired to come and explore the Didrichsen Art Museum and its upcoming exhibitions.